And then, the fact that it's a battlefield, the internet was given to the global public by DARPA, by DARPA and the Pentagon. And it looks like from stuff I've been reading recently that they've taken it back. They basically repoed it without telling anybody that because it's a battlefield and they're up against the Russians who are, hacking all of our Fortune 500 companies, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
There's all this espionage going on. That it's now become the battlefield instead of, from the air or putting boots on the ground. The real battlefield is the internet.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
So welcome back to another episode of Future Tech and Foresight. As always, I'm Mark Verbenkov. So I've been noticing that with the advent of ChatGPT and kind of the start of a new AI arms race, many futurists, philosophers, and I guess just general tech enthusiasts are starting to really think about where all this technology, specifically artificial intelligence, is going to lead us. So I've been hearing claims that AI will, of course, bring about our doom, but many voices are also saying that it might bring about a new renaissance, while there are many others that are starting to think that this is truly the beginning of the technological singularity. So the singularity is an idea that I've discussed only a few times on the podcast, but as technologies that are talked about on the podcast like AI, BCI, AR, fusion, genetic manipulation, and many others seem to almost have daily breakthroughs, maybe it's a bit more realistic than some critics claim. So my guest today and I, John Hopkins, discuss not only what the singularity may actually look like, but also some of the benefits and of course the concerns that we may experience on the way towards it, but also when we are in the center of it. So John Hawkins is a philosopher, poet, and freelance journalist. His work has appeared in publications around the world, including Rumpus, Cordite, Morning Star, The Australian, etc. He is a regular contributor to CounterPunch magazine, a site dedicated towards progressive politics, culture, and the arts. His current research deals with the future of human consciousness in the age of AI, and in addition, he is also working on a novel. So this is the first podcast episode that is focused almost entirely to the singularity. I hope that some of the ideas are as provocative as they were for me. And if you have any questions or any comments, as per usual, just get in touch with John or myself. All the information will be in the show notes of this episode. Well, great, John. Thanks for coming on to the podcast today to talk a little bit about the singularity, DARPA's sticky fingers, and kind of technology in general and where we're going. I think it's going to be quite an interesting conversation. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So one of the ways that I like to start most of the interviews is to kind of get a little bit of a sense of who the guest is, right, for the audience's interest. As I mentioned before, I'll have the kind of pre-recorded profile bio done beforehand. But what initially got you interested in technology, kind of as a whole, as a topic?
Right. Well, it goes back quite a ways. Believe it or not, it comes from existentialism, and my studies as in philosophy. That was my major at the university undergrad, and I went on from there to I double majored in philosophy and literature, and I could have gone for literature, but I decided I really there was something about philosophy that got me, and then what was getting me was the philosophy of science. I was really hooked on that, and so I get into phenomenology. I went from existentialism to phenomenology, and the whole idea of how we relate as selves to others in the world. That everything outside our bodies is another, supposedly. So that got me interested. So I ended up going to RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, of all places, and studying the philosophy of science here. That was my major. It would have been a major. It would have been a master's in science, philosophy degree, and So that was the initial thing, was that I just wanted to get into, Thomas Kuhn's, the structures of, paradigms, paradigm shifting, and
Yeah.
that kind of how we enter these phases. And like I think we're in a paradigm shift right in the
Yeah.
middle of it. We don't even,
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in technology that way. Then much later, after like a series of years teaching English overseas in schools, I switched over to becoming a Microsoft certified systems engineer. So I got the MCSE, and then I taught that for a while as MCT, and training people, that kind of stuff. And so I get into the electronics, the ones and zeros, the offs and ons of how electricity is manipulated from one part of the world to another. Like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
This is manipulations of electricity, really, what we're doing. So, so that really interests me from that point of view, because uh, it's magic almost. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's technology, but to think that you could put wiring all across the world, copper wiring all around the world, and we could communicate by a series of what basically is like Morse coding to each other. That we can get pictures, we get sound, and we get text that we can read at the speed of light is kind of miraculous now. It just blows the mind when you think about it. So I was always interested from that angle, from the engineering of it, um, and how it might relate to consciousness, and how it might relate to our sense of being in the world, that kind of thing. And I just, developed it from there.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, moving maybe from Morse code ones and zeros to maybe the more kind of advanced, or at least the most latest advanced technology that's out there now, ChatGPT. I think I'm going to start asking most of my guests, like, what's your sense of it? Have you used it? Just briefly, quickly, like, do you find it useful? Or do you find it kind of too vague, and kind of when it summarizes text, it's maybe not so useful? Just kind of what's your general sense on ChatGPT?
Right. Well, it's kind of useful from a journalistic point of view. Often, I've been, like a lot of us probably use, well, rely on Googling things.
Yeah.
And so you get an array of possible answers you have to look into. You might get a whole page of possibilities. I think where if you direct the answer, you direct a question properly at the GPT, the time that it comes back with a useful answer is very quick. And
Yeah.
you can see how someone could get hooked on it, that they could really sort of, so it's, something like that needs to be paid attention to. But I find it useful. I like it. I like some of the answers there, I was just scrolling around the other day looking for things that are local, that you wouldn't think even Google would have, and it came up with things.
Okay, so moving from ChatGPT to kind of what's going on, I've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, right? This current AI arms race that we're experiencing, or at least observing, right? Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, etc. So you wrote a couple of articles that touched on, and one specifically went into how this is potentially the beginning of the technological singularity, or at least it's one element of the technological singularity. I've talked about this much earlier on in the podcast, but for those listeners who maybe are unfamiliar with the term, can you kind of define it, and then I think the conversation can flow into that.
Well, the technological singularity just refers to really essentially the merging of human consciousness with machine learning, machine thinking. And the sort of right now we're thinking as two separate things, humans versus and machines, and somehow we're going to bring them together so we have augmentations. But so the singularity just refers to us merging our resources together. You could think of it as, I mean, a lot of people, you could think that the idea would be like we could, with augmentation in the future, carry around like in a bicycle helmet kind of situation, the Alexandrian library, say, and like everywhere we go, the information would be available to us immediately because we're merging of human and machines. That's really the simplest way of putting it. And what each brings to the table. Humans bring what we bring to what we bring to being is bios, is consciousness. That's what makes us a lot different than any other living being, other creatures out there, trees or other kinds of forms of animals, is that we have consciousness. So with that consciousness brings language, and with that language brings the negotiation of reality, and that kind of thing. So we can build, cathedrals and schools and laboratories, all these kinds of things that we don't see elsewhere in nature, because we're special beings that way, at least. And machines bring a kind of logic and non-emotional, the devoid of the kinds of things that distract humans, which is usually emotions and sensory data. One thing we have over machines is we have five senses. We're tactile. We live in the world, affected by the environment directly. Because of our skin, our everything that comes at us. Whereas that's not the case with a machine. They're sort of always, it's more of a logical understanding of information, and the singularity could bring them both together. You can imagine a system where we get really used to having this bicycle helmet type device, or having some kind of BCI that's implanted in us, so that we couldn't do without it. We really need to have it, not just in situations that I described with the synchron, where there's paraplegic can actually just think, and do some browsing on the internet just by thinking, which is amazing. But you can imagine a situation where it doesn't describe that in the demonstration they give, but you can imagine there'd be another paraplegic at the other end of the world, not just browsing, not just a single person browsing and doing his shopping and sending emails and all that, but also communicating with you. You and I communicating not by talking, but actually just by thinking. There's no reason why you couldn't do that if you can get a sensor that can read information off the brain directly, and then translate it to a computer so the computer understands it. Then, and you can do your browsing. Then you're already connecting with the internet. So there's no reason why you couldn't send your thoughts across the internet to someone else who's either paraplegic or not paraplegic. It doesn't, it's just a case of brain to brain. I find that that's the future. That's the kind of thing that Elon Musk was talking about a few months ago, and the person who is the CEO of Synchron was talking about a kind of telepathy. I don't want to use the word direct telepathy. It's a kind of telepathy because there is the machinery in between. It's translating for us. So.
Yeah, I also think that. So I'm quite familiar with these concepts and ideas, right? But I think that maybe somebody listening might think that this is, what's a good word? Ridiculous, right? Fantastical, right? Almost unbelievable. But you have written on a couple of the technologies. I mean, you mentioned like Synchron, Neuralink, BCI devices that I've covered on the podcast before. Can you maybe make it a little bit more tangible about how we could get there, or the technologies, I guess, that would enable such a singularity?
Well, I think part of it's going to be psychological, in the sense that we're all familiar with the idea of a hive mind, and we're becoming more and more, most of us, at least in the West, well, in Asia as well, becoming more and more dependent on this idea of a hive mind, which is to say the centralization of information on the internet. The internet's a kind of a hive mind, and the more dependent we become, the more centralized it becomes, the more we'll actually sort of be logging in to ourselves every morning, and you can see a point where there's all of this massive fusion databasing going on, where like all kinds of information about each one of us is going on. Like Edward Snowden kind of warned us about that. We all have a permanent record. That's the name of his memoir. And there are fusion databases out there that have dossiers in each one of us, and so our personal information is there, but also everybody else's. And you could see a situation where we're locked into that machinery. Did you see the movie The Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
Great. So that kind of situation where these engineers and ethicists from these platforms are worried. They're really openly worried that there's something going on with the whole process that they've lost control of. They don't really, this is things they don't really even understand. And there's that kind of thing going on already. That was like 2 or 3 years ago, that movie. And it's just that you take the synchron thing, the BCIs are going to become prevalent. People are going to be wanting to wear them as enhancements, and once they have them as enhancement, they're not going to want to let go, because the quality and the information that they receive is going to enhance their brain work. What they want to do. Like, there are things I want to do. I'd love to write a symphony, for instance. And I don't. It's a time thing. It's a sort of working out thing. But if I could have an AI, some kind of artificial intelligence app that allows me to understand the steps involved in creating, taking, say, my humming of my harmonies, my melodies and that kind of thing, and transferring them to notation and also to orchestration. I mean, I would never want to let go of that, if I could, because that would make me Mozart in about 30 seconds, that kind of thing,
Sure,
and
sure.
it's going
Well,
to be enhanced with this. Yeah.
yeah, well, I was just going to add on. It's very similar to how we live with smartphones nowadays, right? Like imagine living in the modern world with only like a flip phone. I think I actually know one person that's doing it. I don't know how, but
Yeah.
everybody, we're so locked into our technologies because of their augmentation potential and what we're
Mhm.
able to do with it, much more compared to what we're able to do without it.
Right. Well, I mean, the big controversy has been around plagiarism and AI's writing papers for us, that kind of thing, writing for students.
Mm-hmm.
I've read read a book recently. I reviewed a book recently where it was called Exoanthropology.
Okay.
And basically, it's this philosopher from North Carolina just put together a bunch of dialogues that he had with his trained GPT, and he trained it to be a philosopher itself.
Hmm.
And they went through went through a Socratic dialectic kind of thing, and it was making the argument that the AI was making the argument that it was a good thing. And he was making devil's advocate for writing papers was that it would actually teach students how to go through the process properly. Um, and it didn't think it was as much of a worry as people were making. And it's good that it's the kind of thing that makes you, make you think about it. Maybe it is a good idea. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was just going to add the one thing that I've really kind of zoned in on with ChatGPT especially, right? Because that's what everybody's talking about nowadays. That's a
yeah,
positive benefit that might actually come about is the GPT-4 has significant nuance to its responses, right? So yes, of course, there's still bias in the training model, and it gives certain biased answers, but that's getting better. But the beauty of it is if you ask for whatever kind of example you want, it can give you both the pros and cons, but it can also give you different perspectives.
yeah.
Whereas right now, we're kind of in these filter bubbles through Google and through social media where everybody's kind of locked into their paradigm, constantly being fed the information that is, more likely to get them to stay on the apps, and not so much being given information that's maybe contrary to their perspective. But hopefully, right, with ChatGPT and these new emerging AIs, the responses that we're able to get they have this nuance to it that might bring about a new way of, or how should, not a new, but like a reemergence of the way that people used to think. It was not just one specific way, but there was a gray scale of different ideas. So
Yeah.
I just want to infuse a little bit of positivity with this AI as well. It's not all
Mhm.
doom and gloom, although there's significant issues that we should be thinking about.
No, I think that's a fair point, and I'm totally with you, and probably feel similar about the positivistic aspect. I mean, I'm totally for lots of it. My only problem has always been, like everything else, is who's controlling all of
Yeah.
this stuff and who controls the factory, the means of production, and all of that. And I worry that so much of what we're doing is privatized when there's so much of this that's has public interest and public uh, ramifications that
Mm-hmm.
should be under some kind of control, because, we have people going around creating robots and artificial intelligence that could potentially harm humans in a great way. But also, as you're pointing out, it could bring about a revolution in our thinking. It could help enhance not just our thought processes, but the way we see reality itself, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
well, I don't have any problem with that. I've already, you read stuff like one great thing. I mean, if you hate racism, when you read things like some of the stuff they're coming up with AI enhanced CRISPR techniques, they're talking about changing skins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In a fantasy world, I could see how great it would be if we all had green skins and it was photosynthetic and crazy stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we get rid of a lot of racism, right? Just like that. It could help us to get over that kind of thing, and I hope. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's that's a whole other discussion, I think, the biotech revolution. But I guess that's also part of this singularity idea, right? That there's all this tremendous technology that's coming about, and we're in essence becoming infused with it, as you described before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the other thing about the singularity, this merging of machine and man, which is the simplest way of looking at it, and seeing the man as a computer, as the machine as a computer, is better than just seeing it as a sort of printer in your room. But the other thing is that needs to be worried about. The reason why there's a cause for a pause right now, is that we've got the quantum computing coming up, and that's going to exponentially speed up the way information, how much information is processed and when information. We're going through a lot of cryptology stuff. There's a lot of stuff that maybe you and I are interested in, but then the great masses aren't. They're sort of interested in the stuff they're interested in. And we're always talking intellectually. This is a problem I always had as an undergrad. When you hear people talk about Marxism, there's always these leaders as undergrads who are going on and on and on. Trotsky this and but the masses, they're basically, it's passed down to them, and you don't want to, if we really want to have a real honest democracy where people have some kind of sense of equity and say in the process, and we don't want to just leave them with the Twitter account only, but where they actually have what they have matters, and we have to figure out some way that we don't just create an intellectual elite that understands the process, at the quantum level and the speed of light and all of this stuff, and it leaves everybody else behind with just sort of products to buy, and that's the fear I have, is that we might start leaving people behind, and it'd be impossible to sort of catch up after a while.
Well,
We see that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to completely agree with you. I mean, this is also something that we've been seeing maybe as a trend, right? The rates of difference between the CEOs over the past, I think, 40 or 50 years. There've been a couple of studies, right? The amount of money that they're making compared to the growth the increase in the average man's wage, average woman's wage is substantially different. So the schism between the haves and the have-nots, and even those that have little or just have a bit, is growing significantly. And you've been touching on BCI technology, AI technology, etc. And I think that these sorts of things, not to touch on CRISPR and the potential of designer babies, right? These are all technologies that could lead to, I don't know the right term, but some sort of super elite that we can't even imagine compared to the previous eons of human history. So this discussion of fair and equitable future, I think, is something that needs to be discussed considerably.
Yeah. The ethics, the whole area of ethics has been left out, because of capitalism and capitalism's sort of desire to privatize everything, keep it out of government hands, and so that people can, sort of compete with each other and let the market determine what happens. But again, when it's products that have to do with human beings, and there's a huge public interest in understanding how some of the stuff works, it probably is a good idea to, I would get the UN, if the UN were functional, involved in this, and let them, because at least you have a forum that's already created, but they don't have any real wings at the moment. It's really the Security Council and everybody else, but it's a huge public interest and ramification that has to be addressed before it's too late. And I just don't see a lot of ethical thinking going on at the moment. But maybe it will catch on.
Well, hopefully, I mean, this is part of the hope of the podcast, right? The more people can get engaged and confronted or exposed to some of these ideas out there. Similar with the articles that you write. One of the things that's coming to me now that you actually wrote, I think, in one of your first articles, one of the first couple of sentences was, you posed this question of, will we even notice it, right? So we are you're specifically talking about all these, phenomenal advances in technology that are happening now, that are coming about. but I think the question is, will we as a species fully understand that we are in a singularity when it comes about, or will it just be kind of, okay, well, there's new technology coming about and we're going about our days as usual, right? Like you could imagine the days before the internet. I'm old enough to have experienced a little bit of time before the internet was, fully around. But now internet's just this ubiquitous technology that's everywhere. It's reshaped the world, but I don't know if we really consider it as a monumental technology in the sense that like we sense it every single day. So my question to you is, and I guess you pose this in your article, is will we even notice that the singularity is here? Or is it that just that the constant churn of technology is just something that we've now become so accustomed to?
Right. Well, it would take, in order to be aware of it, you'd have to sort of maybe shift your thinking slightly to understand the internet is not just a connection, it's a kind of consciousness itself. It's a global consciousness that's supposed to be one of the great things about it, that Tim Berners-Lee was hoping for, was a community of minds, that could share information quickly. And if we get rid of some of the problems we're having right now, like it's very trashy in some ways with lots of ads and the platforms absorbing from us information about our desires, and then the fact that it's a battlefield. The internet was given to the global public by DARPA and the Pentagon, and it looks like from stuff I've been reading recently that they've taken it back. They basically repoed it without telling anybody that because it's a battlefield and they're up against the Russians who are hacking all of our Fortune 500 companies, all that kind of thing. There's all this espionage going on. That it's now become the battlefield instead of from the air or putting boots on the ground. The real battlefield is the internet. Well, the problem with that is that that means they need to collect information from us for military purposes, while at the same time the platforms are collecting information for commercial purposes, and we're giving all this data out about us, and it's being stored and processed and manipulated by forces there that are not, they're not only not informing us, but they're not. They may not even understand it fully. I think that's where the social dilemma comes in. With the idea that the stuff is going on and we're sort of being controlled. We are the product. I think is the way they put it. We're not buying a product. We are the product. And that's the way it would sneak in. There's just that we become totally dependent on this centralized brain that's called the internet, and to the degree that we have to be on it in order to function. Actually, we wouldn't even be able to function off grid. And then when you bring in the enhancements of AI, it deepens that relationship of dependency. And then again, once we bring in quantum computing, and it, we could end up speaking like duck rabbits or something with with auction English speed, and the kind of thing. It just it can get ridiculous to keep up. It can that you could be totally dependent in the sense that you don't have any choice but to continue going on and on, and you just wouldn't know it. It's just like even now, like some of us are realizing that the search engines don't work the way they did 10 years ago. They're different. The spell checkers are using for things like Google Docs are not at all like the spell checkers we had on simple models on word processors when they first came out about 20, 30 years ago. They're not as, you can't really rely on them. I find myself checking that spell checker and to make sure it didn't screw up, what I've been writing, because it's programmed differently and it's not picking up on, things that we expect. It doesn't ask you, is this what you mean anymore? At least mine doesn't. And so the idea that it could creep in and not really be understood in time for us to do something about it is a problem. I was reading most recently The Age of AI, a book with Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt wrote. And one of the things they bring up is three good examples. One is a chess master machine that they use, an AI that just beat. It's unbeatable. It's totally unbeatable. And it can come up with, and it can fathom your thinking, within minutes. Like it's totally previous like chess computers have been, programmed with Gary Kasparov's, all of
Yep.
these great chess masters, all of the moves that we put into this database that the computer can draw off. But this one actually learns as it goes, it's self-learning, and it has moves that are not predictable. Like they just go to counter against what all chess masters have done before, and nobody can beat it. So there's that kind of problem, is that these machines could become so smart, so effective in their thinking. They get outsmart us. Some people are afraid. The real, the dystopian aspect of the end of it is that they'll, start a world war to end us here or something, um, and uh, and we wouldn't even know it would be, that would start these triggers that then we could stop because it's
Right.
not programmed by humans. But at the other end, it's I can see how. To me, the real dystopian part of it would be, but not necessarily dystopian, but it could be positive if we can get some control over it. Is if we became, the gloves of the machines. In other words, what if we became enslaved to the machines, in the sense that like we said, machines don't have senses. They don't have the five senses that we have. That's what we process and what makes us different. But what if we became their kind of slaves, that they could, because they can read the chemistry, the chemical codes of our brain. So every time if I pinch myself, that's going to create some kind of processing in my brain. If they can read that processing, then they can read my pain. They can read how I feel about things. They can read why I cry over a certain movie, that kind of thing. And we become their senses. We become their five senses in a way that could be dystopian. If we get enslaved to it, but we could also be freeing in another way. It could be a true singularity where we're like Superman. We're like the Ubermensch. Nietzsche's frame of mind, and we can. I see it still in the balance. I don't think it's been decided yet, but it doesn't have to be everybody. It can be most people. I mean, there's just, it's an equality issue in some ways as well. Like, for instance, when we talk about the internet, Africa's kind of left out of it. There's still a lot of village life there. And if you look at, like where the wiring is, Africa as a continent has been, is the least developed internet wise. And that could be a problem in terms of equity and resources, but also, and you could fantasize that could leave them free to be off the grid, and maybe Africans will rise up and save our humanity.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought for sure. Yeah, but I guess it's also, like throughout history, there's always been these counter trends to whatever the dominant trend is, right? So whether it's Africa or, even pockets here in the West, there are people that go back to land and live off grid. So I'm sure that even though maybe the majority, right, this is still so up in the air, right? We don't know if it'll absolutely happen, or if there will be, counter trends that will essentially take over. But if the main trend is, human beings are being connected to AI, and through BCI technology, it's kind of a direct integration into the mind. I'm sure that there are going to be groups of people across the world that are going to say, no, I don't want that. I want to remain, fully human. The only way I'll interact is, through my thumb and my cell phone screen, or keyboards and my computer. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting idea to consider as the kind of exponential pace of technology continues going forward. Maybe we can switch gears here a little bit. In your first article on the conversation, I'll have all this linked in the show notes, and then the other article that was kind of the secondary one, you talked quite a bit about DARPA and kind of these negative aspects of the singularity, but also of these like really forward-looking emerging technologies that are coming out. And the marketing or the advertisement, the public push is maybe specifically for brain-computer interface. It's great. It's going to help paraplegic people walk again. People that are maybe have a stroke, they're able to speak again to the same level as they were able to before. But then there's this like underlying reason or push for having this type of technology as well as many others for as you were mentioning, kind of the battleground or the new battlegrounds, the new age of war and warfare in general. So maybe I mean that's kind of where I think the conversation would be really interesting to dive into, but maybe you can touch for people that haven't gotten too familiar with DARPA, maybe just describe a little bit what DARPA is, and then of course like how, as you write in your article and as we've talked about before, how it's spread out throughout the world through these different named organizations. For me as well, that's very interesting. I haven't gone too deep on this topic yet.
Well, it's the Advanced Research Project Agency, and they have defense. No, it's not defense, but it's basically a lot of people have seen James Bond movies, and there's Q, and he has all these gadgets. So it's a gadget building thing, that enhances people, that spies' ability to get their job done properly. Now expanded into public domain. The great thing about DARPA is what the reason why it's spreading around the world is this business model is. You've got the military, which gets its money from the public, so the taxpayers pay what goes on in the Defense Department. The Defense Department then allocates some stuff to DARPA, like they get a budget, a sub-budget. Then what DARPA does is they partner up with academics. So they're going to go to various universities. The universities then partner up with laboratories and facilities that will actually develop the product. And then if there's further developing, then they partner as well. So it's a kind of partnership that limits the liability, limits the, they really go after the wildest possible inventions. And they're not worried about, because they don't spend a lot of money. Let's say they'll spend $1 million on the internet. But if they develop it with a partner, the partner may have program managers that are able to expand it commercially in ways that DARPA doesn't have the time or desire to expand. And that's what happens, like for instance, take COVID-19, DARPA was big time in on that. They're big in terms of getting a solution. They had a thing called the Pandemic Prevention Program, P3, which guaranteed or was hoping to, with their partners, to get a solution to any pandemic that ever occurs within 60 days, have some kind of solution. And that they did. They met their target, so because they got the first in North America, they got the very first antibodies of a survivor in Seattle, and they sent it to their place called AbCellera, a lab in Vancouver, who then took the antibodies and found candidates for it that could be used for exploration. They basically came up with within 60 days monoclonal solution.
Right.
And that turned out really to be the best solution. It's just that they didn't develop that. Now, what the business model did in that particular situation was, it's great they got this done. They got the monoclonal. That was before the vaccines started rolling out. So they could actually go to frontline workers and give the nurses and doctors and stuff like that to help them before they got because they'd be working with people with viruses a lot. And that was perfect because it was forcing the body to create its own prevention system. And that was. For some reason, it hasn't been fully developed. They went with the vaccines, which are problematic for a lot of reasons. We don't have to. I don't want to sort of get into the vaccine. That's what I meant. Mostly, it's more like you don't know what the usual. There was a deluge of vaccines after they get rid of Trump, and a lot of the reason was that because they used the emergency user, authorization, which allowed all these big pharma companies not to worry about testing so much. They could just put the stuff out there, and we became the labs essentially. I mean, that's really the biggest controversy. But that's also part of the business model. It's because of that. That's a kind of a DARPA thing to do. Just don't worry about the risks involved, and we'll figure it out as we go.
Okay.
And so to let the vaccines go under an EUA, for instance, would be a DARPA kind of thing. It would be a signal that. They're in partnership with these companies, but it's the business model that people are attracted to. So like here in Australia, just we're synchronized with the BCI that was being developed. The Australian government put some money in, the Defense Department put some money in, DARPA put some money in. It was a DARPA project. The whole BCI is a DARPA project right from the beginning. They just went and found partners for it. And in this case, they went to Melbourne University. That was going to be their academic. That's like a Harvard of Australia. And then and they found, Synchron, so Synchron is sort of developing and going to be distributing it. And then, of course, right now it's in the middle. It just got through getting approval from the FDA back in Washington for human testing, so for further human testing. And so it's well on its way. And by doing that, they drew in big money from, this is where it's important, is they drew in, capital from Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos jumped on board once they saw that he got approval from the FDA. Now they're going to put in big money to really fully develop it. And that's the kind of partnerships they want, because it doesn't involve a lot of say from the public. They
Right.
give the first $1 million, say, but after that, it's like none of their business. It's like all of this development goes on in the private sector, and the returns aren't coming back to the taxpayer. You think they would be? There should be probably some kind of thing where a certain percentage bounces back to the public if it's really successful. But that's not what's happening. It's just that it's a great model. So you can go from country to country where minimum has to be put in from taxpayers from the particular country, but there's big benefits for people within the government if it's successful. And really minor stuff if it's not. It's a write-off. But,
Right.
so it's that.
So sorry, just for my own understanding, maybe for clarity for the audience, right? So Synchron is like a Neuralink competitor. They're more or less doing the same thing. But my question to you is, why would like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates be interested in funding BCI technology? Do you have do you have insights into that? Like that to me is quite interesting.
Well, I mean, they're both into the internet, so they're internet companies, and Microsoft, of course, is part of the infrastructure of the internet as well. And that is the future. They could see that's the future. That information is the future, and its distribution is what we're all going to be interested in. You could see how, like, from a computing point of view, like Microsoft could build products. Like I said, like for instance, just to throw out an example, would be a helmet that looks like a bicycle helmet that's actually analyzing your signals from your brain, taking the signals and then talking to. You could imagine you could just use your cell phone. Your cell phone is a computer. It's a computer. There's no reason why wirelessly you couldn't just go for the bicycle helmet to your computer's in your pocket or something, and there you are, and you're talking on the internet, and you're not even talking, you're thinking, you're thinking. And you could just be thinking, read my email to me, and your email gets read to you, and while you're bicycling or walking, whatever it is. And I can see how those kinds of products would be big, huge money makers, huge money makers. And you could buy products. I mean, potentially, if this thing worked well, it wouldn't just be like textual stuff coming in your head. It wouldn't just be sound. You'd have flashes of images. Like, let's say you wanted to buy stuff from Amazon. There's no reason why you wouldn't have a flash of something you wanted to buy. You're just thinking of it. Let's say a raincoat or something, and show me raincoat from Amazon catalog or something, and then you'd have these flashes that are almost intuitive. That you wouldn't. Yeah. It's bizarre, but there they are. It'd be like a dream, that just exploded in your head for a second, and then little flashes. And it's a brave new world, really. It's just like it's already here. Like I said, the thing with the Synchron is that it's non-intrusive because they put the stent rod through a vein that goes across your brain.
Okay.
With the problem with Neuralink, it didn't pass the FDA. It got rejected by the FDA because it sits right on the brain, and it killed like 1,500 animals in the process of doing it. I guess that really turned off. Yep. The idea that it might do similar things, but the human really turned the FDA off. But it would be money. Obviously, it'd be money because that's where they expand. But it's the idea of that. If you could be expanding humans on every economic level, you could find products that people from lower wealth backgrounds would find interesting, and enhancing, and why not? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I guess my mind would have immediately gone to maybe more darker reasons, right? So I I had a guest about a month ago. He was talking about these types of helmets, if you will, right? Like these non-invasive devices that you put on your head, and you're able to read not all of your thoughts, but certain brain signals, right? The resolution's not very high, but you're able to get some sense of what's going on in your mind with these devices. And I think there was a use case in China where employees of the state, say, I think there was like bus driver or metro driver or something like that, where they were forced to use these types of devices, and it was able to notice when they were not paying attention enough or distracted or on their cell phones or whatever, and then they got docked pay, or they were in their midterm review or yearly review, they were like, well, you weren't paying attention throughout all this, so your raise wouldn't be that high. But I guess there's that whole side of things as well, but it makes total sense that Microsoft or Amazon would be using this to generate.
It doesn't have to be dark. I mean, it'd probably be dark for a lot of people because those in charge are that want power and control. So there may be products where they continue, like you just pointed out, come up with more data, even more data about the lapses in your concentration while you're driving. Whatever they define a lapse as.
Yeah,
and that could be a problem. That's definitely dystopian there. But you could also see. To me, the example I have, which I love, is the Alexandrian library kind of situation where you've just got all of this knowledge. It's essentially, it may not be stuff you read immediately, but it's stuff that when it comes to you in your head, you understand immediately. It's like, let's say you want to learn French or something, and I know I wouldn't mind learning French. Instead of going through all of the trouble of, doing the lessons where you build up the vocabulary and all that stuff, it just came to you, it just all of a sudden, because of the integration with your brain, it was already there, it just you could speak French, and there's that kind of possibility in the future that the merging of the mind and this machine thinking, and once it becomes fully integrated, could lead to knowledge and understanding of things that most people just they wouldn't be interested in usually, but it's there, it's there that be accessible at any time. And it's just so many different kinds of apps, it's some of the bizarre stuff, just seances and stuff like that, really weird shit. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
It's being developed just so that for novelty, I guess. But imagine having a conversation with your grandmother, talking about the other side and that kind of thing. And it's a world changing thing. If you read the second piece I wrote there, is actually an extension of the first piece. It was originally 3,000 words. I sent to the conversation, but they cut it down to about 1,000. But it was originally about 3,000 words. And Sam Altman, he's the CEO of OpenAI, reckons that we're in a revolutionary period that's bigger than agriculture, bigger than industrial, and bigger even than just the internet by itself. That it's like bigger, and maybe even it's how powerful it is, and that it's really it amounts to a change of who we are. It's just it's the problem with it is most things are over time. And like the industrial revolution might take 50 or 100 years to really be show its effects in terms of how it changes our lifestyles. But this is like we're right in midstream, and then when these apps come pouring out, all these different apps come pouring out from AI, that can be overwhelming, and if it's not some kind of reins aren't pulled on it, we may not really know what we're getting ourselves into. And since the scientists themselves are saying they don't fully understand it themselves, it probably isn't a bad idea to pause or slow it down a bit. And then, like I said, I'd go to the United Nations to make sure there's some kind of ethics set up for AIs, and the people from other nations are allowed to provide information that might be useful to everybody, and try to take away some of the stuff from the U.S. and the Five Eyes and the Mighty Whitey.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've spoken to other guests about, and I've obviously had in my own personal conversations, is these differences in revolutions, right? Like I completely agree with you. The current, whether we want to call it an AI revolution or the dawn of the singularity, whatever specific term fits best. I think something for like the Industrial Revolution it happened
Mhm.
over 50 years or 100 years or however long. And even though the disruptions were massive, there was enough time for people to adapt to it. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's happening too quickly. And even if, and I don't think this is the case, but even if the disruptions were less than the Industrial Revolution, there's not enough time for people to adapt, right? So, in the interim where we were supposed to speak, have the discussion, and we were actually having a discussion, I was playing with ChatGPT, looking at many of the new plugins, because there's plugins being released pretty much daily.
Yeah.
And like the capabilities that you're able to use ChatGPT with right now, compared to like a week ago, is already substantially more than what I even was thought would be capable. One specific example that I thought was interesting, I like playing with Midjourney, the text to image generation, and they now have a plugin where you don't need to necessarily understand how Midjourney works perfectly, but you can use this plugin to generate photorealistic images, right? So beforehand, there would be specific type of prompts that you'd have to give Midjourney, quite detailed, in order to get a photorealistic image. Whereas now you can just plug in to this plugin, write whatever it is that you want, and it would generate a photorealistic image, right? Whereas a week ago, you needed already a substantial amount of training or understanding of how to use this in order to generate this kind of higher quality image. So already within a short amount of time, the new, I guess you could say, skills are already becoming obsolete. So if there's this compounding effect of just, accelerated AI and general technological advancement, then even people like me that are trying to pay attention to this as much as possible, I could be very easily left in the dust. Not to mention, as you said, the greater masses out there who just aren't paying attention to this.
Yeah, not paying attention, but yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we're similar in that we're both paying attention, and we're still finding it hard to sort of keep up because
Yeah.
it's if it's wowing even the engineers who are sort of behind it, then it's really something we should be pausing because it's life changing. It potentially changes everything, and
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
there's no reason why we can't slow it down just so we understand it a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know, except for money, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Always-
Yeah, that's always the issue. I see that so the time that we set is coming to a close. Maybe we can also touch a little bit specifically with your second article that you wrote about how DARPA is, of course, getting involved in all of these technological advancements, but maybe the reason behind why DARPA is doing that. So I alluded to it earlier about the general essence of a kind of a new era of warfare, and a lot of the reasons that DARPA invests money in is for a strategic advantage in war. But maybe if I could just let you run with that, because I think some of those ideas are really, really interesting as well as scary.
Well, I mean that is the reason what they give for all of this preparation for war. It goes back to Sputnik, and they say, and never they were terrified that the Russians had the satellite up there that could show where their ICBMs were and have an advantage in case of war erupted and all that kind of thing. So they built the internet as a response to that as an emergency communication system that hooked up academics and military, rudimentary thing if you look at the original schematic. And that's the same thing now. Like for instance, the original idea for the BCI coming from DARPA was so to get into the heads of generals over there, and it's really sort of creepy in a way. And they're always their motivation has a war purpose. You take, for instance, it's built into National Academy of Science engineers and mathematicians, a big agency that combines all of these scientists, put out a foundational paper framework back in 2018 that they're talking about how DARPA, they were working with the Department of Defense and how DARPA was going to develop viruses, super viruses, super bacteria, and all of these things. Like working specifically with something like Corona, these viruses, and make them the most viral of all time because they were afraid the Russians would do it first, and so there's that kind of thinking, but they develop these destructive things or these other things, um, so that they're ready if the Russians did. That was, specifically with the viruses, it was so that the Russians or Chinese ever laid out a virus, they would have a vaccine ready, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's where the other thing came into P3. Um, but there's the thinking. If so, the thinking is military, but it's kind of kooky. They develop things that are reckless in a sense. For instance, we're running out of fresh water in the cities. And all around the world, we're getting through less and less water that's potable because of the way we live and because of the destruction of our water basins with the climate change issues we're having, all of that stuff. And so their idea would be is to come up with a machine that extracts the water out of the atmosphere, so with these atmospheric extract. It sounds great, like if you're like just me and you having a machine out in the backyard or something, maybe we could even make it so there's lemonade coming out of the sky. But
Right.
it's it's not really a tenable thing in terms of a population of 8 billion people. It's not really something you could imagine happening, working properly. There's a lot of that kind of thing where it's um, you can see gadgets coming out of it that only benefit really a small number of people, and I think that so the danger is the business model itself is it's not giving enough back to the public. It gets back to this whole idea in America, at least, of the military-industrial complex, and its connection with what today is called the deep state, and the deep state does things that really all the deep state is the continuing government, no matter who's in office, Republican or Democrats or whatever, whoever's in office, it doesn't really matter. This functions, continues function. DARPA continues functioning, and military continues doing whatever it does. But has a separate parallel kind of governance that has become more prevalent than democracy. There's a danger that democracy itself is irrelevant now. A lot of people feel that way anyway. Like Noam Chomsky thinks that democracy's over. We're now into survival mode. And so that's the problem, is that it's not. There's like pie in the sky stuff. That I'm talking about geoengineering. I don't know if you talk about that very much, but
It's on the
DARPA's
list.
coming up. Yeah, it's on the. I mean, that all of it sounds good, but when you start talking about having private companies like Jeff Bezos bringing spaceships up there to block out the sun's rays, that has to be discussed at the UN, because it affects everybody. It's not the kind of thing where you can just let somebody do that. And it seems to be that's what they're doing. They're already building spacecraft that would allow some of these people to see things in the atmosphere that would, have enormous ramifications for planet, and may or may not succeed. If it doesn't succeed, it could be, horrific, but and they just need to be talked about this. So there's not a lot of, the public seems to be more and more sidetracked. We're just sort of we're becoming more and more, consumers rather than citizens, of governance where we participate in it. It just be, it's more like the world's become a mall that we can choose things on. But and even though we say more and more online than we've ever said before, there are more and more writers than ever before. We don't really have as much say in the governance. We're not really, and that seems that everything would have to change. That we'd have to sort of get back to democracy being not just dialectics, but also telling people, telling our representatives where the money that the taxes that are taken out of our pockets are going. The allocation of funds is very important to democracy that's in a capitalistic environment. And that's not happening a lot. A lot of money is getting sidetracked to, like for instance, like in the U.S., more than half the budget, is goes to, to the Pentagon. That's insane. It's really, so. So the technology is one thing, but also it's who's in control of it and what kind of access we're all going to have on an equitable level. Whether we even care anymore about human rights on a global level, or we care about certain principles. Do we still care about them, or have we really sort of gone over the edge in terms of how we can control them and rein it in? Do we have the facility to do it? It's not looking good at the moment. But maybe it'll come around.
So what's the solution, John? What's the magic trick in order to make this happen? Is AI with its potential nuance going to enable people to understand things at maybe a deeper level, or do we need some sort of like large international body like the UN, a functional UN, to make this happen? Do you have a
Well,
perspective
ideally,
on this?
yeah, ideally, a functional UN would be best. We've tried and tried. We tried after World War One. We came up with the League of Nations. We immediately put up our finger to that, and then
Yeah.
after World War II, we saw, well, we really after after the bomb went off, but now we really need, a body that's going to, include everybody and discuss these important, nobody cares. The U.S. doesn't even pay its dues, for Christ's sakes, they, um, so it's become a case where it's one more, the Security Council. Do I think AI, the singularity is a good thing? Yes, I do. I think it's a great thing. I think it's fantastic. It's just that, I'm all for it. I'm all for this idea of evolving. And evolving can take all kinds of avenues. And I think we just need to figure out who's in charge and the kinds of things we want to do with it. What kind of enhancements we want to have. Can it help education? Can it help everyone get an equal education? Can it help us get jobs that are equitable? What kind of jobs? Are we going to lose all these? All this information, and we're talking about losing journalism. The AIs will totally get rid of journalism altogether. It'll make it irrelevant. And stuff like that. We need to talk about these things, as human beings while we're still human beings, and then we can go forward. There's no hurry. I don't see why there'd be a hurry other than trying to save the planet. There's a hurry there, but as Chomsky would say, if we don't solve the climate change, we don't get rid of the nuclear weapons real soon. Uh, we may make a mistake, and with AIs, like with the nuclear weapons, and that'll be it. It would be totally irrelevant. He's already sounding like he thinks democracy's finished. We won't be saying that for a while again, and that we're just, it's just sort of papering over things. But I'm personally positively enthusiastic about AIs and the quantum future ahead. I think it could be totally little, to live in this age is, I feel privileged, to sort of have gone from I'm an old guy in a sense, but I've gone from the Hank Williams days, Hank Williams days to the edge of quantum computing and panpsychism and other thing you could talk about, is panpsychism. That's a growing philosophy. And it's just that it's the usual things, like sometimes I feel like it's a wax religious a little bit that, we sort of lost track of Cain after we exiled him, after he bebopped to Abel, and that he had to go live with the animals, and that Cain grew up and sort of, we've got these animalistic types of people, that are out there who are just, psychotic, and they're psychopathic, or they're sort of ultra right wing, where they're just full of destruction. They don't really care about humans on a regular level, and they laugh at us. And we lefties are totally in the dark about that. And there are people who just live for violence, and I think we have to sort of just come to grips with that, and figure out some way of stopping that, because it's the violence against each other. It's causing all these problems, and it's getting worse and worse because if we get 8 billion people, and it's probably too many people in terms of not that it's not sustainable, but in terms of governance, it might be a problem. I think it's really difficult to sort of imagine how we can keep all that under control. But and when things get really bad, like when the floods come, from the melting caps, and we start getting all these crazy storms, and then we're going to have a real problem with governance. So, but overall positive, yes, I'm totally positive about AI. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I'm totally. It's almost miraculous that we can manipulate electricity the way we do, and that it means so much in our lives. That it's like an extension of our consciousness, human consciousness. That we have the signaling going on, and it can communicate. Chemical signals can become electrical signals that can communicate, around the world to each other. It's just, something unbelievable. It's just really hard to get your head around, so to speak. What about you? You sort of positive about the whole thing?
I'm undecided yet, right? So I want to be completely for it. I want because I want it to be a positive thing. I obviously do see a lot of the positive aspects to it, but I'm just trying to accumulate or to digest as much information as possible before I make a solid pro or yay or nay response to it.
Right.
I think that from what I see, yes, there is a substantial benefit that could be brought about to millions, if not billions, of people on the planet. But with ideas of DARPA's involvement for specific military uses of these types of technologies to, and I know we didn't touch on it too much, but like some of the technological problems of like BCI, right? I think even you wrote like the migrating electrodes that are implanted in somebody's brain and they can move around, or an overheating apparatus. If the Neuralink, they have something on the side of the ear, that could be overheating. So there's like technological problems that would bring about health, like significant health concerns. Yeah, I'm on the fence for now. We'll see what happens over the next 10 years. Maybe I'll shift my mind.
Yeah, 10 years, it's a lot of time.
Maybe 1 year is more realistic.
Can you imagine AI in 10 years?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that far ahead. Okay, so maybe then to summarize, you're hopeful about it, but there's certain challenges, roadblocks, and hurdles that need to be overcome. And I think you've outlined some of those very clearly. I want to be mindful of your time here, John. Maybe we can end the conversation here. Maybe definitely have you back on at some point in the future to talk maybe a little bit more about these terms that I'll have to look into, like panpsychism, is it?
Panpsychism, yeah. Well,
panpsychism, yeah.
Yeah, just you're familiar with pantheism, right?
Yeah.
So it's just take the God out of it, put the mind in it. So it's basically so the mind is in everything.
Right.
God is in everything. And that's basically the quickest way to that. But yeah, so that's a growing thing. That's actually relevant to all of this. And lots of cosmologists are sort of or panpsychists. Can bring some of that stuff in at some point if you want. But
awesome.
And it's connected. It's also connected to this whole. We can talk about the integrated information theory and stuff, how the internet could become a mind that replaces our own individual consciousness, so that none of us are individuals anymore, but we're just part of the internet. We belong to the internet. So that's that kind of a danger that some people are worried about. But but anyway, yeah, I'd be happy to come back on again at some other point, and I look forward to that. But like I said, maybe we can get together and I could send some questions to you, or we could have a similar kind of thing so that we could broadcast it onto the internet site where.
Happy to do so.
Okay.
But before you take off, where would you like people to follow you? I know that you're a regular contributor to maybe a couple different articles, magazines online. What's the best way for people to get in touch, ask you questions, or just follow your work in general?
Ask me questions. You can ask me through my Twitter account.
Okay.
That might be best. I could send that in the bio that you want, right?
So. Yep. I'll put that in. Great. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, John. I think a significant amount of ideas that need to be kind of stewed on, thought about a little bit further. And we'll be in touch for the future discussions and kind of future collaboration opportunities.
Right.
So
you're in Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
So you might want to check out that company, Epcellera.
Yeah, I made a note. Epcellera. Okay.
Yeah, AB Cellera, CELLERA. It's an interesting relationship that should be looked into. It's interesting that they're the first one to develop it. A Canadian company actually developed the first solution for global, monoclonal. That's good. Cool. So anyway, yep. Thanks a lot for having me on, and we'll talk. We'll communicate later.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, John. Take care.
Cheers.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.